If you're looking for fantasy football sleeper picks that you can draft in round 10 or later, stop right here. This is the video for you. I am here to give you realistic sleeper picks in double-digit rounds that can actually pay off for your fantasy team. These aren't wild hits. These are things that can actually be usable assets, some of which you can put into your flex spot literally in week 1, and some of which have league-winning upside. Who are we talking about? Let's dive in. Jacory Croskey-Merritt, yes, this does qualify as a sleeper pick. He is a round 10 or 11 pick right now. Now, if you guys followed me last season, you know that I was staunchly anti-Jacory Croskey-Merritt, as anti-Jacory Croskey-Merritt as you could physically get. I told you, I begged you, I pleaded for you to trade that man away while you could, and you fought me. Some of you fought me on that. You called me crazy, but I was right. So understand that this comes with no bias against him, and if you haven't followed me before, just FYI, that is the beauty of me. I don't subscribe to take lock. If a situation changes or you improve as a player, I do not hold the past against you. I will adjust accordingly. I'm not going to die on a hill for no reason. And when it comes to Jacory Croskey-Merritt, there is reason for us to change our perspective from what happened last year. The Commanders made it very clear to him what he needed to improve, and he took it to heart. And by God, I think he might have succeeded. He was a liability in blocking and in the pass game, and they wanted him to improve in that area, and that is what he worked on all offseason. Now, make no mistake, Rachaad White is excellent on that end, and the odds of Jacory Croskey-Merritt getting better than Rachaad White after training for one offseason is slim. But the goal here was not to improve enough to where you had to beat out Rachaad White on that and be so much better than him. The goal was to be good enough to where you don't have to be physically removed from certain scenarios, and you give the team the flexibility to not have to have one back for this and one back for that and be super predictable. And he is a better runner than Rachaad White as well. So if he improved enough to warrant some usage on passing downs and he gets the early down work and goal line work, we have got ourselves an excellent double-digit round sleeper pick right here. And Jayden Daniels being healthy should help. The threat of Jayden Daniels opens up running lanes, and he's not a hog at the goal line, so this can functionally work here for JCM to have a breakout. Before we move on to our next player, this video is sponsored by RotoWire, and you can get 25% off through the link below in the video description using my code Tera, T-E-R-A. It gets you amazing tools, and it's a great way to support my channel as well. Signing up with RotoWire gets you access to their fantasy football draft kit, which includes draft assistant, unlimited simulations in the mock draft simulator, custom rankings, player outlooks, ADP reports, premium content, and so much more. And it does not stop there. You also get access to in-season tools that are very critical for helping you actually win your league, including waiver wire rankings, trade analyzers, competitive insights, and more. One of the tools that I would recommend using as we talk through sleepers is the mock draft simulator. It can help you understand where these sleepers are being drafted, what your build will look like if you reach early and grab one of them, how to properly build your bench with both high upside swings and safe floors. Because as I always tell you guys, you want to target sleepers, but you also want to make sure that you are building your team appropriately so that you do not end up with a bunch of sleepers that you cannot utilize until week 8, right? So you can do these mock drafts as many times as humanly possible to get the right build for your team and dominate your fantasy draft. Again, you can get 25% off your subscription through the link below in my video description using code Tera. This might be the most critical sleeper on this list because he does have a legitimate shot of being the wide receiver 1 in this offense in Indianapolis. Now, that doesn't come with the same fanfare as some other teams because Indy does have 100+ easy target tight end, and they do run the offense through Jonathan Taylor on the ground. But Josh Downs has a shot to put up very easy top 24 production and massively outperform his ADP. Things are not looking good for Alec Pierce. We do not have a timeline on his return at this point. There's a very good chance that he starts the season on the PUP. The Colts receiving core is looking very thin, and Downs has been a very steady producer his entire career there. He just never really got the opportunity or the chance to push through that middling production because of Michael Pittman specifically. With Pittman gone and with Pierce injured, Downs should be the second look behind Tyler Warren, or maybe even operate with a similar target share. And when Pierce comes back, Downs definitely stands to be the most consistent producer on a week-to-week basis. And he did actually out-target Pierce last season. Pierce just had more yardage and touchdowns. But Downs has shown the ability to handle steady volume and offer a very solid floor, even last season in a very crowded group of pass catchers. Now that everything is thinned out, we're going to see good consistency here. And really, the exit of Michael Pittman is the most critical aspect here. Pittman was not he's a big receiver, but he was not a big, deep threat. He had a relatively small ADOT. Pittman and Downs both had an ADOT of 8.4. They also were extremely similar in yards per route run. So again, while they're two physically different players, they were kind of similar in terms of role, and so Pittman's presence did hurt Josh Downs' ability to consistently be utilized on the field. But with Pittman gone, there are 110 targets exiting that offense. Do not underestimate how much of that work will naturally slide to Downs, regardless of when we see Alec Pierce. I firmly believe that Carnell Tate is the future of the Titans. He is the wide receiver 1 in a 1,000-yard season in year 1. Very realistic. Might not be a problem whatsoever, right? But offenses don't run on just one receiver, so we do have to look at other players. And while it pains me in terms of secondary options to look past the young second-year receivers in this offense, because I do love them, I do, the most likely scenario here is that Wan'Dale Robinson is the second most productive fantasy asset here. And quite frankly, maybe even the most productive fantasy asset in full PPR specifically. I mean, look, so many fantasy analysts have spent all offseason talking about Liam Cohen coaching Chris Rodriguez years ago at Kentucky as a sign of favoritism. So why not hype up a player being signed in free agency by a coach that literally just gave him back-to-back 140 target seasons? Yeah, that is Wan'Dale Robinson and Brian Daboll. And before you say, well, Tera, last season was just without Malik Neighbors, it's not going to happen again. Yeah, and the season before was still 140 targets with Malik Neighbors getting 170 targets. So Tate being the wide receiver 1 doesn't mean that Wan'Dale Robinson can't eat in terms of targets and receptions. And last year was really a breakout season for Wan'Dale Robinson. Brian Daboll finally trusted him downfield, and those 140 targets and 93 receptions and 699 yards in 2024 turned into 140 targets, 93 receptions, and 1,014 yards. It's amazing what people can do when you actually allow them the freedom to occasionally go downfield. Crazy, who would have thought? But Brian Daboll clearly likes him, and Wan'Dale Robinson has real value in this offense, an offense that should take a leap forward with Cam Ward looking far better in the back half of 2025. The talent is there, the promise is there, this can pan out. And a usable asset beyond Carnell Tate in the receiving core, very realistic here. I was targeting Jalen Coker regardless, but Chris Brazzell going down for the season makes it even more critical for us to look at Jalen Coker. And I hate that. I really do, because I was really hoping that for the sake of the Panthers offense as a whole, that Brazzell would be that final piece that would complete the Panthers receiving core, because Xavier Legette ain't it. I was hoping that Brazzell might finally help convince Dave Canales to add a bit more volume here for Bryce Young, but at least now, unfortunately, for Brazzell, that does mean that there's really no threat to Coker's role as the second look behind Tera Roberts. I know that I have talked about my concerns about the pass volume issues for the Panthers and that I'm a bit uncomfortable with Tera Roberts at his ranking, but it's a ranking issue. I do trust McMillan will hit 1,000 yards again, but I'm just concerned that the volume for Bryce Young won't jump enough for us to get much past that, really, and to give him a high ceiling on a week-to-week basis compared to other receivers being drafted around him. That's the only issue. But we don't have to worry about that with Jalen Coker because you were drafting him in double-digit rounds. And Coker really asserted himself at the end of the last season, so the Panthers made sure to lock him into a contract despite the fact that he has never had more than 500 yards in a season. He's had issues with being able to stay on the field. That's the only problem. But he's healthy right now, knock on wood, and cross our fingers that it stays that way. Despite primarily playing in the slot a lot, he is not at the mercy of just seeing the ball 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage like you do with other smaller slot guys. Coker had a very healthy ADOT of 10 yards, just 2 less than Tera McMillan, and he is a quarterback stream, right, with extremely reliable hands. I am a true believer. You guys know that. I believe that he gives you day one flex value at a fraction of the cost that you have to pay for other flex options. Now, sleeper RBs aren't necessarily easy to find because at some point they literally just become handcuffs, right? And everyone that's a handcuff ultimately has RB1 upside potentially if their starter goes down. But if you want a late round sleeper that could actually provide fantasy value without the lead back having to go down, look at Keaton Mitchell. I promise you, I am not part of the delusional Keaton Mitchell club. I am not that far gone. And this is not an indictment on Amari and Hampton. In high-powered offenses, it is possible for an RB1 to exist with a change of pace back providing usable fantasy production. And Hampton, he is a 3-down back at 220. He's a big guy, but he can be very productive after the catch as well, and he has good hands. But new offensive coordinator Mike McDaniel has been known to be very partial to the little tiny speedy backs. It's not a coincidence that Keaton Mitchell wound up in LA. McDaniel wanted him. So we could very well see meaningful usage from Keaton Mitchell as a change of pace back here because Mike McDaniel is feeling a little nostalgic for his Devon Achane. And that's not just speculation. The Chargers do intend for Mitchell to have a role. Now, Mitchell hasn't exactly been reliable in terms of health. I tend to defend little backs as not being as injury prone as people might think, but Mitchell clearly has a pattern, so I cannot defend him on that end. So he does have to actually stay on the field. But if he does stay on the field, he can hit a home run real quick. So we're not looking for massive volume from him. We are looking for meaningful volume here. Now, I do not want to dismiss Kamani Vidal because he was admirable last year filling in for Hampton, and he is definitely the direct handcuff to Hampton because he actually has the size and durability to handle 20 plus carries a game. But look at Keaton Mitchell as the most likely candidate to see the field alongside Hampton as a change of pace back, and that he would likely retain that role if there were an injury to Hampton, plus maybe a little bit extra. Now let's talk about Jonah Coleman. We talked about him in the Rookie Sleepers video. Coleman is more of a long-term play here. It is possible, though, that he contributes early on during the season, but highly unlikely, and honestly, hopefully not, because that would be a genuine nightmare from a fantasy perspective. But the most likely scenario is that Coleman isn't a usable asset early on during the season, and the backfield split looks like it did last season with J.K. Dobbins on early downs and short yardage, and then R.J. Harvey receiving work plus red zone work. Our vision here is that you draft Coleman late in deep leagues, you hold him until the Dobbins injury, and the theory here is that Coleman profiles as a direct replacement for Dobbins so that Sean Payton can remain his infinity committee with Coleman and Harvey. Dobbins was essentially a low-end RB2 last season. He averaged 11 fantasy points per game in half PPR. He had essentially a ceiling of a high-end RB2 and a floor of a low-end RB3, so it was rather steady production, not a super big ceiling. So with Coleman, we're interested in him as a late-round draft pick in deep leagues with the hope that Coleman is going to be a low-end RB2, but there is more upside here. It is possible that he could have an even higher ceiling than what Dobbins has. Not necessarily because he's better than Dobbins, but because the Denver offense is changing coordinators and they have a lot more room to be more productive in terms of scoring, more efficient, produce more goal line opportunities. And there is another caveat. Yeah, there's one more. It is also possible that Sean Payton just straight up loves this guy. and uses him as a 3-down back because it sounds like he is doing very well in pass protection during training camp. So if he can do that, and if he has solid enough hands to handle checkdowns, he could get a little bit more of that work that Dobbins wasn't getting, be a more well-rounded back, and have a higher ceiling. Now, this one is taking a chance that might not pan out, whereas I have a very good idea of what Josh Downs and Wan'Dale Robinson and Jalen Coker's floor is. I cannot give you the same baseline for Golden. I can't. Because on those other offenses, I can predict exactly how those players will be used and what their snaps will be. I know what they will do on the field. I know the target potential. But we're in brand new territory here for the Green Bay Packers receiving core and for Matthew Golden. Golden didn't really have a role last season, but the Packers have been very intentional, thank God, about finally thinning out their very bloated receiving core, and Christian Watson, Jaden Reed, and Matthew Golden are the clear starters. And we know their roles. Yay. Thank you, Jordan Love. Jordan Love told us. Jordan Love said that Golden is the X receiver, Watson is the Z receiver, and Reed will be in the slot, plus Tucker Kraft, obviously. Now, the Packers have leaned aggressively on the ground game since the addition of Josh Jacobs. I don't expect that to change significantly here, but there is room to increase pass volume. But it is important that we note that Love has been capped at under 450 attempts for the past 2 seasons. Now, he's missed a couple of games, so if we were to push that out to a 17-game pace, it would be just under 500 attempts. Theoretically, Watson is the wide receiver 1 here, and we know that the Packers run a lot of 12 personnel, one of the highest rates in the NFL. I have seen mixed reports on whether it will be Reed or Golden who would remain on the field. I've seen it said both ways, but regardless, Golden will have time on the field to showcase his talents and make his case for being the wide receiver 2. Watson has also struggled with his health his entire career. Reed's production has maxed out at a low-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3. There is zero reason why Golden can't take the opportunity and just flat out showcase as one of the most reliable receivers on the field. Because specifically, drops have been an issue for the Packers receiving core, and reliability in solid hands is literally Golden's best selling point. Being the wide receiver 2 of this offense can be a viable fantasy asset, and he can get there. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. You can find me across all social media platforms at It's Tera Time, so make sure that you're locked in, tune in, subscribe, turn on notifications, and all that good stuff. And also make sure to take advantage of that 25% off at RotoWire with code Tera, T-E-R-A, and use the link below in the description. Thank you for watching this video. We'll talk to you again later, guys.